Good afternoon, Ashley.
Hi.
Yeah, good afternoon.
It's not afternoon, it's morning.
No, it depends on your sleep schedule. Because for me, I've been waking up now so much earlier that I feel prime afternoon time right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect this to be the best podcast we've ever had because, I mean, I'll be honest, usually I'm at like a 7 because it's early.
I'm really proud of your sleep schedule. You know, we had a conversation about that it might be better if you went to bed earlier. Maybe, 2, 3 a.m. is a little late. So, and now you've been going to bed a little bit earlier with me, which I really appreciate. And then you actually have been, I put the kids on the school bus and I get back in bed and you are awake and ready to go.
No better time to be alive, right?
That part's annoying. Everybody has their marital issues. That's ours.
Speaking of marital issues, this will be the 14th episode of the podcast. We have decided.
I'm trying to figure out how this is going into marital issues.
Yeah. Trust me. So trust me, you got prime afternoon Mike right here. This will be episode 14, and we've decided this is going to be our season finale.
Yes.
And I'm very proud we haven't killed each other throughout these 13 and a half now at this point episodes.
I honestly think that you've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great.
I've enjoyed it too. It's been really nice. I really enjoy, and I say this every episode, I really enjoy the commenters on the podcast because I can recognize some of the names now. It's usually the same people. What?
Oh no, go ahead. Keep telling me what you enjoy about the podcast. I'd love to hear.
No,
Do you believe this? No, keep going, please.
I do. I enjoy, and the commenters are so kind. Versus I will look sometimes at your shorts, and it is a completely different demographic. And I know that there are more people that watch that. We had one recently that we did about Uber. It was from the podcast, but it was a short, and it was up to like millions of views. And wow, people can be harsh and mean. And I just am so appreciative for the viewers of the podcast and their kindness for the most part.
That is so nice, Ashley. You appreciate the commenters, the viewers. That's awesome.
There was one comment that I recently put that I said, that is the nicest comment that we've ever received.
Before we get there, though, I want to tell you what I appreciate about the podcast.
Okay.
And it's you. I appreciate the conversations that we have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That too.
Marital issue number 1.
That too.
I'm sitting here being like, yeah, I enjoy talking to you. And I do enjoy that. No, I also really enjoy even looking back, because I'll look back at some of the podcasts like leading up to this one to try to remind myself what we've talked about before, or look at the comments to some of them to see if there's any ideas. And you look back at the first couple episodes, and I mean, to me, that feels like it's a long time ago, but it was 3 or 4 months ago.
I mean, we started filming in October, November.
Something like that, maybe.
Yeah. And I do think that it was a long time. They've gone through some big moments with us. They've gone through the private school trying to get her in. We still don't know yet about any of that.
I guess we have to do an update at some point, April 3rd, or so that's when we find out.
April 5th.
And it's either going to be one of two things. It's going to be us excited that Charlie is going to private school, or me being like, that process bullshit.
Yes, and either way, the
process is bullshit. I agree.
Either way, the process is difficult, but it will work out either way. But yeah, I don't know when we're thinking about coming back with the series. We haven't really talked much about that.
No, but we've been doing, so what we do know, or what I think I do know, is that doing it every week is tough.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go to every other week, maybe, just because life, kids,
it's tough.
Our baby is now walking around. I think we showed him on here a couple of times, and he was not necessarily little because he's a big boy, but
we can put up the interview he was doing. We can drop in a photo of the interview he was doing before we sat down in these chairs
with
right now.
his bear and the big blue house stuffy. Yeah. Yes. But he's walking around now, and there's a lot going on. So I think every other week is going to be nice.
I think we'll end up doing these in seasons like this. But I know that with spring break, I'm on a 4-week trial calendar. I have another trial that's going to be up in Rome, Georgia, not the country. So yeah, this will be the last episode in this series. I don't expect us to wait terribly long. But we feel like in a lot of ways we've accomplished our initial goals with this podcast. You want to tell me about the comment that you wrote back and said was the greatest comment that we've received so far? You know what I'm talking? Are you blanking right now?
No, I know. Do you want me to read the comment?
Yeah, don't read all the ones that say you're fired. Let's skip this one.
So the comment that this person said,
give them the name.
I don't know how to pronounce the name.
It's the comment that like meant the most to us because it summarizes what we knew we were about to talk about.
It summarizes how we feel about the podcast.
Do you say you don't know how to pronounce this?
I just don't want to mispronounce
we got to do it. We got to do it.
Not.
Oh, no. Ashley is a reading specialist, grew up with dyslexia, conquered it, chose to become a reading specialist to help kids with reading, including kids with dyslexia. You are a phonics specialist. So if phonetics and all this together.
Is it Babylonian?
Yes. B? Okay. You were going to go Babylonian, weren't you?
No, I wasn't.
Baby lion?
I read things phonetically. So when you get a word like hors d'oeuvres that's thrown into a reading.
Hors d'oeuvres.
Or you get a...
Oh, God. Say the word. I mean, I'm just thinking French words. I was thinking charcuterie.
Yeah, and it's not
doesn't follow the phonetic rules, right?
Well, they're different language. Like hors d'oeuvres, isn't that French?
I think it's French, but I think we use it
we did, but it doesn't follow the United States of the American phonetic system. No?
The United States of what?
English. It doesn't follow. That's the word I was looking for. Jesus, you put me on the spot and then I get flustered. So from Babylonian B wrote, it feels like Mike and Ashley are single-handedly rehabilitating the image of personal injury lawyers across the entire country. Yes, he's cocky and a little pushy.
I don't remember that part, actually.
I'm amazed.
Is that true? Did you add that in?
No. That's it. It says
I didn't remember that part.
But I'm amazed at how much thought and empathy he puts into his job.
Wait, when you read this to me, I think you cut out that line and didn't read it to me.
I purposely did that. But I left it in for the viewers this time. Between the care of young adults and their money to his efforts to be inclusive of all groups and peoples, it is just very humanizing. Like I always had this impression of personal injury lawyers as ambulance chasers and sleazy salesmen, because that's what media often portrays them as. But seeing them as people like this makes it a lot less scary to imagine reaching out if there was a problem. And I think that's what you wanted to do with this podcast, is you wanted to definitely be a little bit more humanized. And I went back and I read some comments on the Uber one that we posted, the Uber video, the short, the one that got millions of views. And there were a lot of people that said ambulance chaser. They said...
Leech is a good one.
Leech. Somebody said... all lawyers are feces. And that to me was just really...
It's kind of funny.
And then I have to think in my mind, they don't know you. Before I knew you, I probably had the same preconceived notions because of media. You know, I try very hard not to stereotype people. Yeah. And I can look back and say that was absolutely an incorrect view of personal injury lawyers. And I'm not saying all personal injury lawyers are amazing, like you. Or fire, like you, like people say.
So, getting back on topic. So, all lawyers are bad. Let's start with that premise, okay? I think there's 1.3 million lawyers in the country. Anybody who says all of 1.3 of anything are good, bad, whatever, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. There's always a group of good, a group of bad, a group of mediocre.
Lawyers across the spectrum do so many different things, from, defending people who are innocent, to prosecuting people who are guilty on the criminal side, to helping businesses operate, to helping workers have rights. For everything that you have an issue with a lawyer, there is the opposite of that lawyer. It's like Newton's law, I'm going to mangle it here, but for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Let's start with the criminal side, and then I'll get to the personal injury side. If you hate sleazy criminal defense lawyers, that means you like prosecutors.
Okay.
And if you hate prosecutors, they're all bad. If you're one of these extreme people that have extreme views like this, then you must love criminal defense lawyers. Personal injury lawyers, okay, you hate personal injury lawyers. We are the scum. Well, then you must love insurance defense lawyers hired by insurance companies to stop evil, greedy plaintiffs and their clients from getting money. It must be one of the two. The news flash I have for everyone is I did defense work. So did I become evil the moment that I went and worked for my first plaintiff's firm? Like, did I suddenly just change who I am? Did I decide I'm going to destroy the world. Did I rip my shirt off like the Hulk? Like, no, I literally just said, I think this is a really good opportunity for me as a lawyer and as a person. And I think there's a lot of advantages to doing that other work, helping injured people, because they need help.
Well, I think people that say things like that and comment things like that are in two groups. So the first group, I think, is that they have never needed a personal injury lawyer, which good for them.
Yeah.
Because it is scary to have yourself or a loved one hurt, or, you deal with a lot of clients where you represent like their children because there's a death involved. And then the second group is they had a really terrible personal injury lawyer, which I'm very sad for them. And that because going through whatever they went through, that they needed a personal injury lawyer, and then having to experience somebody who didn't meet their needs and wasn't kind, and just a bad experience is really sad, because that's like a double whammy.
Yeah, it's really tough to run a personal injury firm well. You graduate from law school and you're not much of a lawyer. Like you don't have the ability at that point, at least the knowledge. So at some point, your focus generally to begin with is, okay, I'm a good lawyer. Personal injury lawyers fall in two categories, like you were saying, of clients. One category is, I worked for, and I'm not bragging here, but I worked for one of the 50 largest law firms in the world for 4 years. And then I went and worked for a really good plaintiff's lawyer. So like when I opened up my firm, I knew how to do this stuff. I was competent. I would never open up a firm. I could have graduated law school and just opened up a firm and said, I'll figure it out. That's really scary, especially on the criminal defense side. Hey, my lawyer's never learned from anybody. He just graduated law school. I can tell you, don't learn anything in law school. That is practical. Here's how you do things, right?
Right.
So one category of personal injury lawyers are ones that just said, I'm going to open up my own law firm. I say this to friends of mine who did this. I think they had bad judgment at that time. I don't think that was a good idea. Or you couldn't get a job somewhere else. So it's a necessity thing. And I get they got to do what they got to do, but that's really scary for your clients. So those are the two options. You come from a really good place where you just had to do it. And hopefully you figure it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully. What if you don't? And do you want to be that person's first, 5th, 10th, 100th client? I sure as hell don't.
Yeah.
Imagine a builder.
Right. Well, and we've also talked about with lawyers that dabble in everything, that aren't, they don't have one specific form of law that they focus on.
They're taking anybody that comes in because they just need the money. The majority of cases that we work on the firm come from the lawyers. And I always get really frustrated when there's a middleman. And what I mean by that is lawyer gets a call. And let's make it easy. Let's say it's a divorce lawyer. He gets a call from a former client who says, I was in a car crash. Can you help me? And that divorce lawyer says, okay, yes, I can help you get to the right person. Let me refer you to someone who does personal injury work. And they refer him to person X. Okay, lawyer X. Well, then lawyer X screws around, tries to figure it out, can't. And 4 months later, while nothing has happened, lawyer X then calls me and goes, hey, I've got a case I'd like to refer to you. And we get to that point in time where we talk about how we're going to split the attorney's fee. Okay, because when lawyers refer cases to each other, this, we share the attorney's fees. It doesn't go up for the client, but if the attorney's fee is a third and you get another lawyer involved, you got to cut them in.
Right.
So, the good news is when somebody refers you, you're getting an excellent referral, hopefully, and you're not paying anything more.
Well, and you're getting more heads than just one,
right. But you need the lead person, right?
Yeah, you need the one that is specialized, which usually is you when it is you when it gets to you.
Yeah, but lawyer X sits there and goes, hey, cut me in. And I'm like, you are technically in charge of the case right now. So if I say no, then this person is going to be left with you.
Yeah.
And which is a hard conversation to have with someone who I have a business relationship at least, because they're coming to me, can you help? But at the same time, I think to the original lawyer, like, hey, your percentage of the money is going to get diluted because now I'm going to get involved and everybody's got to take less so I can take some.
Yeah.
So it hurts the lawyer. It hurts the client because they sat around for 4 months doing nothing. Maybe lawyer X did something that hurt their case.
You might have to clean up some messes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what really bothers me is that middleman person who doesn't have the competency. I'll die on that hill. And if any of the lawyers who are middleman X watch this, they probably already know how I feel.
Instead of just saying, hey, that's not for me.
Right. Call Mike. Guy. Yeah. Call Mike. That's what should happen.
Do you know what I found really interesting? Going back to that video and some of the comments, a lot of people wrote ambulance chasers.
Yeah.
And do you know what I didn't know when I married you or when we were dating?
That I can't chase ambulances.
Well, yes. I didn't know that you couldn't just, if you saw a wreck, you couldn't go and say, hey, I'm a lawyer. Here's my card. Give me a call.
I can't give you my card and ask that person to go give me a call.
Yeah. I didn't.
Slowly walk away. Head down, walk away.
I know. The term ambulance chaser is, how did that come about? Where did that come from, I guess, if you can't even legally do that?
Way back when. Lawyers are educated, is the theory. Lawyers are educated, everyone else isn't. And lawyers are educated to persuade and which it doesn't happen in law school. There's very few classes now about persuasion. Persuasiveness.
Persuasion?
That one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, now we're even. On this podcast. So I don't think that really holds true anymore, but that was the idea. Lawyers are persuasive, and they shouldn't be allowed to go up to people and solicit them directly because they would trick them.
Okay.
And that theory pretty much still, even though I think a lot of it is gone, still holds true. I mean, up until 20, 30 years ago in places, lawyers couldn't advertise, do mass advertising or really advertise anywhere.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Why is it the same 3 or 4 guys that advertise here in Atlanta that are older? Because they were the first round of people doing it.
Yeah.
And that's true everywhere. I mean, so that's the premise is lawyers are tricky and persuasive, and they can, not necessarily tricky, but they are persuasive, and they could exert some influence on you and have you agree to something that you wouldn't normally agree to if they were talking to you in person. So you're like, I can't get anything in this house. So you're not allowed to in person directly solicit clients. So, I see a car crash. I can't walk over there and say, hey, I'm a lawyer. I can help you. Here's my card.
Right.
So I cannot do that. Are there lawyers who do?
Oh, even though you're not allowed to?
Remember, I was sitting outside and I told you that my client called. Hey, I just got your contract. I don't know. Why do I need to sign another one? And what's this other law firm, Guardian Law Firm? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, well, your paralegal just called me. I'm like, that wasn't my paralegal, man. And then it happened with Chris in my office.
Yeah, well, I knew it happened with one of your lawyers. How do they get that information?
Yeah,
that is crazy.
The backstory here is that Chris Stokes, partner in my office, gets in a crash right by the office. And I'm driving to work, and I'm like, where'd you get into a crash? And he goes, over here. So I pulled behind him, checked on him. It was a hit and run. Driver hit someone and then ran. Mm-hmm. And it was a temporary tag. So, no chance of ever finding the person. But he was okay. No injuries. Police officer comes, and let's say it's on a Monday. Mm-hmm. The police report, City of Atlanta, that shit's not ready till Friday at best. Okay? So, and if anyone knows how to get a police report, it's us, right?
Right.
So the police report is not available. We can set a little alert through a system we have that will tell us when the police report is available. And Stokes did that. But he gets a call from so-and-so at the Guardian Law Firm, and he's listening to this and he records it because he obviously knows this is wrong. But yeah, they solicited the shit out of him. That is a felony in the state of Georgia.
Wow.
So the thing is that Stokes is a lawyer, and it's actually not an ethical violation or a crime to solicit a lawyer because you're of equal persuasiveness, right? They didn't know that. They didn't know Chris Stokes was a lawyer. But to hit on what you said, we don't know how they got the police report. It's either got to be a police officer, someone in police records, or there's a third-party company called Bifurcation. It's one of those. Now, there's a lawsuit going on right now, a whole bunch of plaintiffs' lawyers, us, terrible people who are chasing ambulances. A whole bunch of us have been so frustrated that the state bar won't do anything and hasn't done anything. So a group has decided to file a lawsuit against Guardian Law. A lawyer represented by a lawyer, plaintiff's lawyer, represented by a plaintiff's lawyer, sued this law firm for breaking the law, for soliciting their clients, for doing all this stuff. We try our best to police ourselves. We do. I don't want bad plaintiff's lawyers around.
I'm going back to, it's either that company that you said, what was it? Bifurcation, or a police officer.
Which police officers in DeKalb County were arrested a couple years ago for selling information for police reports.
Well, and that is illegal, right?
Yes.
You can't pay somebody that is, you can pay lawyers that refer you the cases, right? They get a cut of the settlement.
Correct.
But you cannot pay people that are non-lawyers.
Except in 2 states, one of them being Arizona. But yeah, the other day, my car had to be towed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm out there with the tow truck company guy, and I mean, it was a struggle because the way our driveway works.
Yes, it's hilly.
Yeah, so I'm out there with the guy for like an hour helping him. I feel like he literally said to me at one point, he's like, "Hey, hold this flashlight." I felt like I was Eric Foreman in that 70s show. My dad's gonna be like, "Don't hold it there, dumbass." Like, and I'm like, so I'm like doing my thing, flashlight. I'm helping him, making sure the car doesn't.
I came home at the end of this.
Yeah, well, and at that point, I'm making sure like he doesn't run over, half our yard, or the car doesn't fall off, because that was a legitimate problem. It was because of the sharp turn. But anyway, he says to me, "What do you do?" Whatever, and I tell him, and he goes, I got this guy that he's willing to pay me $1,000 for every time I tow a car and get a story that they're not, of how the crash happened, that they're not the cause of it, and I just text him the name and he'll give me $1,000. And I said, "Oh yeah, good luck. That's a felony." And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable with it." And I'm like, "Look, man, you do what you got to do, but that's fucked up." And so that happens in my industry. People break rules. Yeah. It happens. The number one group of people trying to stop that are plaintiffs' lawyers who don't do that.
Right. Well, and people doing that's just feeding that stereotype.
Yeah. And
which is really sad.
We call these people runners. Let me back up for a second. So a non-lawyer soliciting on behalf of a lawyer. So calling you up and saying, "Oh, hey, I know a good lawyer. Will you sign up with this lawyer?" Or, with the tow truck guy. We call them runners. They run cases. Have I ever worked on a case that a runner originated, sent to a lawyer, and then they sent to me? Probably.
Yeah. There's no way to really know.
I don't know, because the lawyer says to me, "Hey, will you work on this case?" I talk to the client. I go, "Okay." It's not my standard practice to ask, "How did you find Steve, your lawyer, originally?" It's just a weird thing for me to ask. It's not even for this reason. Imagine if they were like, "Oh, I saw him on a TV commercial," and then they tell Steve that. Does Steve now think like, "Oh, Mike's going to run TV commercials?" So it's like, I stay away from that for other reasons. But I'm sure I have. Statistically, I'm sure I have.
But it wasn't intentional.
No, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it is fairly prevalent. It's such an important issue that plaintiffs' lawyers as a group, we are trying to stop. I mean, why is it that it's a felony in the state of Georgia? Well, plaintiff's lawyer, who was a member of the Georgia legislature, suggested that we do that. He said, "Hey, look, this is a problem in our field. Why don't we make it a felony?" So it's a plaintiff's lawyer who did that. I criticize police officers in some videos, have police officers in my family. That I get frustrated a lot because police officers don't police themselves enough, and police unions will defend to their last breath police officers who do things that I think are very obviously not a good thing.
Well, I think in any field, and this is teachers as well, and I can speak on the teacher aspect, there are good teachers and there are bad teachers, and cops as well. There's good cops and there's bad cops.
I think that from my perspective with being a lawyer, and I guess my interaction with police and knowing a lot about police, just family and stuff, those are two industries that I think you have to police yourselves. And, if you saw a teacher, doing something really wrong to a student, I think you would speak up and you'd say, stop.
Or mandated reporters. So we have to. And we also, and I'm sure this is the same for police officers, we have to take ethical tests every single year. And we have to pass it, and we have to watch videos. You also, lawyers do, right? Yeah. And is that every kind of lawyer, or just personal injury?
So to be a lawyer, everybody talks about you have to pass the bar. You also have to pass an ethical test. So before you ever become a lawyer. So those two things have to happen. So every lawyer takes it. But in Georgia, for example, and in other states, there's a split among states, meaning different rules for different states. In Georgia, you are not required as a lawyer to report misconduct to the state bar. The statute says you should, or the law, the regulation says you should, but it doesn't say shall. And in the lawyer world, should and shall are very different words. So it's not mandatory to report people. I have never reported anyone to the bar. It's one, I'm sure I don't routinely see things I think need to be reported. But number two, I don't have much faith in bar. I don't think they do much. So that's why I think lawyers policing ourselves and trying to root out runners and people that are breaking the law ourselves, which is what some of us are trying to do, I think that is the best way to do it.
What about, so this is a little bit off topic. It kind of goes along with like policing yourselves. there's a lot going on in the state of Georgia as far as the personal injury world.
Like the changing laws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently. It's been
tort reform.
It's been a very big topic in our house. And I have learned more about it than I ever thought that I needed to know, much less wanted to know. But
you're welcome.
So what is going on with tort reform?
All right. So tort reform, I will say this. Grew up more on the Republican side, worked for a Republican senator, worked at the largest conservative TV production news organization in the world.
Oh, you're not going to say the name? Can I say the name?
Sure, I worked out everything.
Fox News.
Yeah. So I have also completely disagreed with so much more recently. I believe that healthcare should be provided to all people because it's a right I think you have. And I see people all the time struggling to get medical treatment.
Well, some of the clients that you have, they really struggle with insurance, and
that's a really good way to, because instead of me running through all my beliefs, what I'll say is, especially through my job, my views on a lot of things have changed.
And I think that's fair. As a teacher and working at Title I schools,
indoctrinating children with your woke views.
Working at ESOL school or schools that have large ESOL programs, my views, I just err on the side of I want all children to, have healthcare. I want them to have access to that.
It's our last episode in this series or season. It's the last season episode. Okay. So we can talk a little about politics, just a little, just a little. All right, let's talk about you then.
No.
Ready? Here we go.
No.
So, Ashley, if you don't answer, I'll answer for you.
I will plead the fifth on
so
everything.
you are definitely more of a conservative than
I have different views. And we talked, I think our first episode talked about guns. I grew up in the South. I grew up with guns. Conservatively, I don't think that having a gun in the household is a problem as long as it's safe. I do think that there needs to be some reform with gun laws.
Yeah, but you definitely identify as a conservative.
I don't want to talk about
when we were getting close to different elections over the years. Do you remember all the tests that I was like, hey, take this test to figure out where you fall on the political spectrum?
Yes.
Where did you fall on the political spectrum?
Moderate.
No, you were more liberal than me, way more liberal. But I say that because Republicans, conservatives, are very good at branding, much better than Democrats and liberals. So tort reform is a really great branding term, just like pro-life, right? What's the opposite of pro-life?
Pro-choice?
Yeah, but if you're not pro-life, you're anti-life. You're, anti, right?
Okay.
So I think that whoever the conservatives have working for them in branding and content, I mean, they seem to have the best. Like Georgia, for what I would call a anti-women's rights bill, was called the Heartbeat Bill.
Yes.
I mean, like, how good is that? That's really good branding. So tort reform is really good branding. For every one frivolous lawsuit, there are 10,000 cases involving a frivolous defense.
Okay. I had to process that.
Yeah. So for every frivolous case, there are 10,000 cases where the defense, the insurance company, the business, is making a frivolous defense. How many rear-end crashes do I come home and I complain about and tell you, this case is so stupid. The case isn't stupid, but it's the defense of the case is stupid because it's a rear-end crash and they're saying my client caused it.
Right. Your client was stopped and they were stopped at like a stop sign or something and your client caused it. Yes, that happens all the time.
All the time. Yes. How many cases do I tell you about where, we know for a fact my client isn't speeding and they say, oh yeah, totally speeding. The witness says they were speeding. And I'm like, we have the black box, the EDR data. No, he wasn't. Or in reverse, when the trucking company says, no, we weren't driving overtime on our hours. We weren't driving too fast. And I'm like,
but then you have their log.
Yeah. And I'm like, sir, this is an exaggeration. You traveled from Cleveland to Atlanta in 4 hours? How that honestly, that's not much of an exaggeration. That's what sometimes these logs show.
Mm.
And they're like, no, that's what we don't know.
It's normal.
Yeah. I mean, like, I will tell you, I will promise to you, like source, I guess is like, trust me, bro. But I promise to you, there are a million more frivolous defenses than frivolous lawsuits. But tort reform is the idea of having to reform torts, personal injury lawsuits, to protect from frivolous lawsuits and verdicts that are what the defense calls nuclear. So nuclear verdict is one that is millions of dollars and it is no justification and it's unfair to the defendant.
Okay, which?
Frazier, the one that you sat and watched the closing argument, Charlie came. So that case was a $3.8 million verdict, which was nuclear. No, it wasn't. No, the value of a life is, I would tell you, more than that. And the way that the defense and the insurance company in that case, defended the case, the positions they took made the jury angry.
They made me mad.
Made everybody mad for years.
They tried to put a value on someone's life based on the way that they lived, where they lived,
who they were, and the things that were outside of their control. Our client had mental health concerns throughout her whole life. And that developed into addiction.
She tried to get help. 100%. She was seeking help. It was a very, very sad case. And I will say, speaking on that, going on some of your videos, and there were people arguing. If you think that this is a ridiculous amount, like you've never been in a wreck, I, broke my arm and I'm still feeling pain from that. I would 100% trade all the money that I got to just not have a broken arm.
Look, out of anybody in this world, I can probably tell you what the fair market value is for your injuries, right? Like Stokes and I sit around and I'm like, hey man, if I punched you and I broke your arm and it shattered, how much would I have to pay for that? Like that, we sit around doing that because that is part of our job. I can give you a really good idea of what a body part is worth and what a long-term injury is worth.
In the Frazier case, the mother, she died. She was killed and she left behind a child that also, she lost 3 children.
Yeah.
And I, as a mother, like there is no amount of money to give my kids or to give my family that would ever make that acceptable. And the fact that somebody tried to put a number on that
was offensive.
Yeah.
You're talking about how little the defense offered.
Well, yes.
And that verdict has been used in hearings, congressional hearings in this state. That's been listed on one of the verdicts of the talking points from the insurance industry about that is a ridiculous amount and that's unfair. What I would tell you is if they were fair and upfront, that wouldn't have happened. Like you can't make your bed and then not expect to lay in it. Like that's their fault. The reason for really large verdicts generally is that there is a terrible injury. It's a prerequisite, a terrible injury. Mm-hmm. And the defense did something that was awful, disgusting. Yeah. That the jury said,
unexcusable.
Them. Yeah, fuck them. How dare they do that? Or they don't recognize the value of a person, a life, a whatever.
Yeah.
So I said for every one frivolous lawsuit, there's 10,000 cases involving frivolous defenses. For every one nuclear, really large verdict, which I would tell you is the fault generally of the defense. Like when defense does stupid stuff in my case, like we celebrate. We're like, yes, like this is great, right?
Yeah.
The classic example being they deny that they caused something and then they come to court and they go at trial and they go, yeah, we caused that. And I'm like, motherfuckers, it's been 3 years since this lawsuit's been filed and you've been denying it the whole time. Let me show you 1, 2, 3, 4, all these reasons why. So I'll tell you it's a result of them. But you know what we never hear about?
What?
What about verdicts where someone gets less or nothing when they deserve it? And it's because we don't, I guess my side of the industry, we don't market that. We don't say, and I mean, maybe that's partly self-preservation. Lawyers aren't going to go around and say, hey, I got a really bad, I tell people my bad results when they happen, because I think it really helps people to learn, and I explain why. But lawyers generally don't go around and say, oh yeah, I lost this trial.
Are you talking about getting verdicts where your client can't pay back their medical bills?
Or even a verdict where your client's genuinely hurt, but the defense claims that they were hurt in a old high school football injury, and that's really why their knee 20 years later was hurt immediately after a car crash, and for whatever reason the jury believes that. Maybe your client isn't likable, and the jury believes that and says, yeah, we're not going to award you anything. Well, that's a nuclear defense verdict.
Yeah.
But we don't hear about those things.
Right.
And so with that background, the state of Georgia, like a lot of other states over the years, is contemplating and is going to change laws that make it harder for people to file lawsuits and harder for people to get money, fair amount of money, when they do file a lawsuit in a personal injury case. The group backing this is the insurance lobby. The sponsors of the bill here in Georgia are all insurance defense lawyers by job. So like their clients are literally Allstate, State Farm, Geico, who name them all.
Right.
And they're sponsoring this bill. Georgia is controlled by one party, every branch of government. So if they want to pass something, they can pass something. And I'll tell you, in Georgia, most people and most personal injury lawyers are conservatives. And it's been interesting to see friends of mine have their heads snap around on Brian Kemp and some of these legislators that they have always supported, and now here they are, telling them that we are blood-sucking leeches and that the laws need to be changed. And the laws that are changing, one, will absolutely not bring down insurance rates, which is the stated supposed goal of this. Why we need quote-unquote tort reform is there's too many lawsuits. Tell you, no, there's not. There's the appropriate amount of lawsuits. Are there more lawsuits? Yeah, but population is growing every year, by the way. The verdicts are too high, and thus insurance costs are too much, and that affects all of us. 2 days ago, there was an amendment to the bill introduced in the Georgia House that would require insurance rates to be only rise with inflation. So insurance rates would only be allowed, and that was voted down very quickly. So what I'll tell you is that from the point of legislatures, they are not truly trying to keep insurance rates down. In fact, they know that this will not keep insurance rates down. In Florida, when tort reform passed 2 or 3 years ago, rates have gone up 37% on people. And that is what is going to happen here, because there will be less lawsuits as a result of these laws. And many lawsuits will be now undervalued, and people who have medical bills and are hurt, out of work, will not be fairly compensated. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. And rates are going to continue to go up because insurance companies are for-profit companies, and they're not going to say, oh, okay, less lawsuits, we pay a little bit less, we'll give the money back to our customers. No. What for-profit business does that? What world are we living in? So there's been a lot of talk here in Georgia and other states about, allowing tort reform to pass, but then saying if insurance rates rise over the next 2 years, then we undo the changes so we can give people their rights back that we're taking away from them, and make sure that, people are fairly compensated. My belief is that if everyone's insurance rates go up $1, that's better than someone who is injured for the rest of their lives being screwed in a lawsuit, not being able to file it, or they don't get a fair amount of money because changes in the law. So rates are going to go up. Nothing anybody can do about that because they're for-profit companies. So the end result of this is it's a political thing for our governor in this state to later run for Senate and say that he passed tort reform. That's what it is. I don't need to be cynical about it, but that is it.
So you kind of answered my question. My question was just, if we took out the personal injury part of it, you being a personal injury lawyer, and we're just thinking about Sally down the road, it affects her because... Correct me if I'm wrong. It affects her because A, insurance rates are going to continue increasing even though they say it's not going to. B, it could affect her if she gets in a crash.
Well, you say that they say it's not going to. No insurance company has come to any of these hearings and
agreed to that.
No, hard stop. They haven't even come to the hearings because they have their lobbyists doing in the background. So name an insurance company. None of them have testified. You're allowed to testify about ongoing bills. None of them have testified, let alone said, yeah, this will keep rates down. We won't increase rates. Because they know it's bullshit. So our neighbors have a kid named Max, and Max got really hurt. There wasn't anybody at fault in that. A tree fell down on their car and really hurt them. Really scary thing.
In the car, yeah.
But let's imagine, for the sake of this, that Max was hit by another car. Right now, the way we have a trial is if Max's case ever needed a trial, we would do an opening statement where I tell the jury the other driver's at fault and Max is really badly hurt. Mm-hmm. We would do witnesses for about how Max got hurt and who's at fault and how badly Max is hurt. You'd hear from witnesses who saw maybe the car hit him, and then you'd hear from his doctors. We would then have a closing argument, both sides, and then the jury deliberate and the case would be over. I could do Max's case, knowing what I know about his injuries and stuff. I could do that in 2 to 3 days. The jury would be out deliberating probably by the end of the second day, worst case, beginning of the third day. Mm-hmm. Now there's something that's going to change, that cases are going to be bifurcated. When can a case be bifurcated? Anytime the defense asks, by the way.
What does that mean, bifurcated?
Bi is 2. So you're going to, no, I know. But it's going to be 2 cases.
Okay.
So now you do an opening statement. In your opening statement, you can only talk about who's at fault, how the crash happened. You call witnesses about how the crash happened. You call Max, you call his dad who's driving, you call the police officer. Then you do a closing argument. Then the jury deliberates about who's at fault. If the jury finds that Max wasn't at fault and the other driver was, then you come back, you do another opening statement about damages. Then you call again Max, his dad, and the witnesses to talk about how bad Max is hurt. You call his doctors. Then you do a closing argument, both sides do. Then the jury deliberates again. It's 2 trials. So
they're, first of all, the people that are being called to testify, they're out of work for those days.
They've got to come sometimes 2 different days.
You know, one of the huge arguments I always hear is that our court system is so clogged up and it's so slow. What you're saying, it seems like it's going to be twice as clogged. I mean, if you think it's bad now, wow, people are really going to be upset. It's the same jury. So they're also out of work. Oh, people are going to be so mad.
Yeah. Yeah. And the insurance industry makes money in 2 ways. They make money by collecting premiums. And then the main way they make money is by investing the money that they collect. And I mean, the insurance industry made $80 billion this year, 81, 82, whatever it was, billion dollars this year. Almost all of that is from investment income. So the longer that they cannot pay things, having court systems clogged up doesn't help Max or Sally, who's out of work, needs money for medical bills, and needs a resolution quick. Doesn't help personal injury lawyers because we don't get paid till the case is over. We're the last people to get paid. Who does it help? The people if they keep their money. These bifurcating trials for any reason, just upon request now, which used to have really good reasons, was a very limited thing. Now, so that's a really easy example. That's one thing. Second of all, you know that our office helps a lot of people that are victims of violent crime. Something we're very proud of. Okay. So we represent someone who was sex trafficked, usually by a family member. So let's say it was an uncle, and this was a minor. Okay. Okay. It's pretty close to a real case, I'm going to tell you. Yeah. And let's imagine that we learn that the hotel where she was trafficked at was involved. The front desk person would keep a lookout for police. The front desk person, for every guy that came there and had sex with this person, they'd give the hotel person $50. So the hotel is completely involved. The trafficker is a criminal, without a doubt. So it used to be, and it still currently is, at the end of the case, the jury would decide who's to blame. And the jury would be able to use their knowledge, their belief. They could use their common sense. They can use all experiences they have. And the jury would have every right to say, you know what? The uncle who trafficked this person is 100% responsible for the injuries that she sustained over however long being sex trafficked. Mm-hmm. They could also say, you know what? The uncle, 50% responsible, but the hotel is also 50% responsible because they were making money knowing that sex traffic was going on. In fact, they allowed it and encouraged it. Yeah. Right? Jury could also say, you know what? The uncle went to jail. This is civil court. I'm not worried about holding the uncle responsible. He's already been held responsible. But this hotel, they made thousands and thousands of dollars allowing this to happen. And if they just would have called police, this all would have stopped. They would have stopped uncle. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say that the hotel is 75% responsible and uncle is 25%. That's fine. And then if they awarded $1 million, the hotel would be responsible for 75%, or they'd be responsible for 50 or 25%, whatever allocation they were awarded, and only be responsible for that. The insurance industry says, well, it's really expensive to insure the hotel now. Well, it should be. The hotel should fucking go out of business. And it's really expensive to insure the apartment complex where people are constantly getting shot. You're a delivery driver, you go to the complex, you think it's fine, you don't know, and then you get shot, or you just moved in with your family. Mm-hmm. This case, happened. The case I'm looking at. Yeah. You move into an apartment complex, you think it's fine, they tell you, yeah, that's really safe here, don't worry. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, there's a shootout, and it's the 9th shootout over 3 years. You had no idea, and the apartment complex had hid it from everyone. And at the same time, they reduced security and made it easy for people to come there knowing there was gang violence. Mm-hmm. It's afternoon Mike. But all this stuff is real. I'm giving you real stories. We used to trust, or we've always trusted juries. If you think it's 100% the person who pulled the trigger in a shooting case who's responsible, more power to you. If you think that the people that allowed gunfights to be there every other weekend are responsible, they are. Good for you too. Now the law is going to be that the judge has to instruct the jury that the criminal should be at least 50% responsible. And if the jury finds that in that hotel case, for example, that the hotel was 75% responsible, the jury who sat and listened to all the evidence, heard everything there is to hear, that jury with the best information decides, you know what, it's actually 75% the hotel. That almost automatically will result in a new trial.
Oh,
because that will be held unconscionable. Jury must have gotten it wrong. The jury who listened to all the facts, listened to all the evidence. Instead, we're going to just go by some legislature sitting under Gold Dome in the middle of Atlanta who decide, yeah, in all of these cases, it must be at least 50% responsibility on the criminal. I've never had a case that we've tried. We try a lot of these negligent security cases. I've never had a case where the jury decided that the criminal was 50% or more responsible. The most I've ever had is a jury deciding, I think it was 36%. The responsibility fell on the criminal, 36%. So am I an amazing lawyer? Am I somehow able to convince however many trials I've had, that many groups of 12 people, that all of these situations are, more responsible because of the business that is allowing the crime as opposed to the actual perpetrator? Am I that persuasive? I can't get Charlie to try like potatoes or eat a potato. So either I'm totally wrong, but also the best lawyer in the world, or the legislator is wrong in doing something that, hey, what will it do? It will result in more trials, delay civil justice, and insurance companies can keep their money longer.
I know. Well, and
I usually don't use this platform to rant and to but this is it.
Well, and we talk about things that are going on in our life, and this is what's
last Friday.
Yeah, this is what's going on.
I've got clients calling me worried. What does it mean?
Cases. Yeah. That makes sense. What would you say, what can people do? Is there anything that people can do, or is this just what the future is going to be?
Here's what I'm supposed to say. Here's what I'm supposed to say. You should call your representative. You should tell them, that taking rights away from people who are injured.
You were going to say that. That doesn't really do much, though.
Look, I don't say it won't do much. I think it matters.
You said that and then you smirked.
The Georgia House is controlled overwhelmingly by one party. The Georgia Senate is controlled overwhelmingly by one party. And they're
the same parties?
Yeah. And that local government, our state government, is because of the way that districts are drawn, called gerrymandering. Although we have two senators, one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, we are nowhere near close to equal representation, which you would expect if we have two senators of two different parties. We are nowhere near representation in the state that reflects what our citizens feel, because it's much easier for one party to get elected. And as a result, Congress in Georgia is overwhelmingly one party. That party is also the same party with the governor. And there's absolutely fucking nothing anybody can do. If they want to pass it, they'll pass it. Some of the Republicans who are in Congress, in the state of Georgia, who are personal injury lawyers, rightfully said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? Again, personal injury lawyers, we want to police ourselves. As people are filing bad lawsuits, we'll be the first ones to tell you that.
Yeah.
So they said, look, there's some things that we think we can change. You know what Brian Kemp says? That's our governor. He says, I've got about $4 million in campaign money just sitting in my account. And if you cause a problem, if you say you're not going to pass the bill, if you try to offer any amendments, I'm going to take my money, I'm going to go find a candidate, and I'm going to give them a lot of money to run against you, so hopefully you lose your seat and you're voted out. And what did everybody do? Fall in line. With one or two exceptions. I will say that. There are one or two exceptions. Why are insurance rates not going to come down, and why are the rates for medical bills not going to come down? Because those businesses are for-profit businesses. I'll tell you the lawyer perspective. Let's imagine Allstate has an epiphany and they say, you know what? We want to lower rates. The state of Georgia, they've made it harder for us to get sued and harder for people to get compensation. Let's give back to the people.
I would love that.
You know what happens?
What?
The shareholders of Allstate can sue Allstate and say, hey, mother, motherfuckers. This is a for-profit business. I own your stock.
You're not taking money out of my pocket.
Yeah, you have a legal obligation to your stockholders to do things in the business that will make money. So if we're going to allow for-profit companies to operate in a free market, which is the Republican platform, I think, free markets. If we're going to allow for-profit companies to do whatever they want and let the market decide rates, then we are going to continuously have the market go up and up and up and up and up. That is what's going to happen. If we one day decide that things like health care are rights and should be provided by government at a reasonable cost, if that system was performed well, we would not have that problem. But United Healthcare is not going to say, let's give back. They are required under the law to make the most money for their stockholders. Mm-hmm. This is the system we live in, people. So yeah, I mean, this tort reform stuff, which is the thing dominating my life. And I am not a political person. I think our system is so fucking broken. I want nothing to do with it. I get a lot of from my friends for not being more involved in the process. I refuse for the most part to kind of be involved. There's just nothing we can do. I'm not going to go and tell you, call your senator, call your congressman. They don't give a fuck. When I worked for Lindsey Graham, I sat there with a little fucking sheet. If there was an important bill, I'd make a tally. Yes. No. Yeah. Yes.
When people called?
No. Yeah. You know where the fucking list went? I'm sure they threw that shit in the garbage. Mm-hmm. Like that's what happened. I mean, I got nothing. I was so excited and upbeat about this podcast, and now I'm just like beat down. I beat myself down just talking about this.
Oh, I'm sorry. How can we pick you back up?
Well, we were going to end, I think, by talking about how the girls have become interested in what mom does, and they're interested in what I do. And it's been really cool to see them get interested in some of the stuff. We talked about Charlie coming to trial and stuff like that. I think we go out of our way to give them a pretty balanced perspective and not push them in any direction. So I guess I'll end by telling the viewers, at least my ending to the viewers will be that if you think that I am completely full of bullshit and everything I've just said in this podcast and all the podcasts and all my shorts is wrong, at least know that's what I actually believe, and that's what I think the evidence shows, and that's what the stats and the information shows. If you have any takeaway, I hope you can say that people can disagree about stuff. We disagree with each other vehemently about guns
and other things.
Yeah, certainly.
Well, I think that's a good example that we disagree about things that are political, but we still are in a happy marriage. I think you can be friends and have groups of people that have all different beliefs together.
There's some people I will not be friends with because of their beliefs. I'll say that. But I think those people are so polarized that they are so far at the extreme. And that's what I'll tell you. The thing I'll leave you guys with is that as a lawyer, when I go to trial, I am very good at polarizing people. I can make you angry. I can make you feel sad for the most part. Right. And I have to have the facts with it. So I can go to the jury.
You have to back it up with facts. You can't just.
Yeah. But if I have a sympathetic client, I can make you cry. Like I know I can. I'm not going to say that we've ever done this, but we've made bets about which jurors we would make cry, and which ones we're going to cry during closing when we said the really sad stuff. As someone who is very good at polarizing people, and as someone who has worked in places where polarization is really important, politics and news, 99% of us in this world are in the middle. We want roads, we want bridges, we want good schools, we want good healthcare, we want to be friends with our neighbor, and we don't want to be absolutely fucked if we get hit by a car and break our arm.
I think that's a good point. I will say the majority of people want, their family to have a good life, their kids to have a good life. They want their community to prosper.
It's the people that are running this country, and the people that are running states and the people that are running industries are generally the people that are running around with signs, screaming and shouting from the top of their lungs. That's not the rest of us. That's not most of us. So if you learn something from our interaction in this podcast, I hope it's like, chill the fuck out. It's not the end of the world, and people that are telling you that things are going to change immediately and the world's going to come crashing down and your life's going to change if you don't do X, Y, and Z, probably not going to happen. That's my message. What's your message? Do you have a message for anybody?
No, I think just our perspective is that no matter what happens, we hope that a little bit of good is put back out in the world.
Yeah, if you came to this podcast thinking, I hate plaintiffs' lawyers, now maybe you're like, well, there's one I don't hate. I would suggest I'm not the best one. I'm not even like a really good one. In terms of work I am, but like there are way better people than me. If I've convinced you to come around on Plaintiff's Lawyers, I've got so many other nicer people I can introduce you to, and you can make a whole host of friends that will be so nice to you.
So this is it. This is the end of the series.
Yeah. Well, end of the season.
End of the season. Okay.
I didn't tell you I was going to say this because I didn't think about it. I also think that in my mind, one reason that we should take a break is because at some point when we come back, hopefully sooner than later, and it will be sooner than later, I think we'll have some breaking news.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Breaking news. About what?
There you go. That's the end.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.